Would like to say Happy New Year's Eve to everyone. It has been an incredible year. The Florida Maquis has gone down a lot of roads. Started November of last year, actually, making videos regarding election stuff. And this past year, we have been places I never thought the channel would go. I had 2 subscribers, and I was primarily just a guy sitting on my couch playing guitar, just putting stuff online so my family from around the country could see it. And it has been an incredible journey, largely due to the people that have come here and supported the channel. It's been kind of terrifying too. I've had to make different accommodations for my family because of the threats that have been received regarding the issues with the administrator. We're not going to waste any real time on that today. But it's been a learning curve for sure. Living here in northern Florida, there's a certain way that you are authorized to live, and if you don't live that way, you will pay for it, and I've learned that the hard way. So anyway, just going through all of the different videos and things that we have covered together and looked at, I found something that made me scratch my head. Who remembers way back when we were doing this issue with sailing our destroyers right up into the territorial water limits of what China is now claiming, these man-made islands, the Paracel Islands? It was an issue during this last summer. Nothing ever happened to these destroyers specifically. One was allegedly chased off, that's the word used here in the article, by Chinese jets. I pulled up where this is. There's the Paracel Islands. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit just to give you an idea. Here's, of course, mainland China, the Hainan Island, Vietnam. We have seen issues with Vietnam having problems with their submarine cables being cut and being mysteriously destroyed in different, they say it's been ships, some say it's been underwater landslides and all this kind of stuff. You know, knowing what we know now, we have matched up the issue with the Fitzgerald with turns and undersea cables. We've matched it up with the McCain. We matched it up with the USS Lake Champlain. And now I thought, what are the odds? What are the chances that we could find any issue with the USS Statham having this problem? And remember, the USS Statham lost a sailor. They had a sailor that went missing very, very mysteriously, overboard. I don't think they ever recovered the man's body. He was an officer too. I'll have to look up who that, I should have brought that tab up, but just go ahead and Google it, USS Statham sailor missing. And no ever explanation for that what happened with that young man. But I thought, let's just go ahead and take a look. Let's see if there's anything strange. Now, there's cables all over Asia. You know, the idea that a ship could be in proximity to a cable at any one particular event, that's likely because of the dense, incredibly dense population of cables. So what I did is in the article, it said that they sailed near a very specific island in the Paracel Islands called Triton Island. So I went ahead and pulled up Triton Island here, and that's that little island up there. And as you can see, of course, the Chinese will have, this is a cable that runs to it, 2 of them actually that run to it and from it. And this is their seaward territorial limit. Now, this apparently was the limit to which they had sailed in, and this is the problem. Now, I looked over here, and of course, there's a submarine cable. And this is the area that was the problem that the Chinese were having with the Statham. So I thought, well, let's just see. I mean, of course we see a cable here. What could there be anything strange with this cable? So I'm like, well, let's just see what happens. I have looked at cables and tracked this all over. I've done it up north of Korea, I've done it around Japan, I've even done it around the US. And I have never seen this. I have never seen this mapping. Now, this could just be some issue with Vessel Finder's mapping program not doing the line properly. But the fact that this little hiccup right here, and I'm going to zoom back out, and it makes it disappear, and show you where that is in relation to Triton Island. It's right there. It's just, when you add up any one of the things that we have brought up about the cables regarding the Fitzgerald, the McCain, the Lake Champlain, and now the Statham, by itself wouldn't be an issue. But when you put it all together, when you put everything together, you put the lies from the Navy together, you put this idea that somehow the most maneuverable ships we have, almost big ships anyway, in the Navy, are unable to avoid giant lumbering cargo ships or not see them. Allegedly, we have orders not being followed aboard in the command areas of these ships. Ships that are turning because of mismatches and thrusters that they're unaware. That ships can collide with other vessels and be taking on water and wait an hour to report it. And here is one of the biggest ones that I haven't covered. In these reports from the Navy, they talk about poor training, lazy, lackadaisical standards. But then, after the event, they talk about how heroic and greatly trained and fantastic these guys are. It's one or the other. Adversity doesn't build character, folks. It reveals it. And if these crews were as bad as they say they are, if there's training issues, it wouldn't have been just the 7th Fleet. And it wouldn't be just destroyers. And it wouldn't have been for only 3 months. So I'm trying to also kind of keep my promise. I said we were going to cover today the 10 biggest issues that I thought we had from the Navy that we just can't believe. One, of course, was the ships being unable to avoid being hit by these cargo ships. Orders not being followed. Number 3 was the ship, the McCain, turning and unaware it was turning or why it was turning. Number 4 for me was the giant damage offset on the Fitzgerald, that they had to go, and the ship made it from the point where it collided all the way the 50-something odd miles, 60 miles, back to Yokosuka. Okay, and it had a tug for power makeup on one side, that's true. But they had to, where they put it, they didn't tell anybody this was going on until it was already done. They had, and I got a lot of crap for it, but secret underwater welding teams went in and welded that giant patch on this thing just to be able to move it across the port from one side to the other. There's a video of it. The grand total event takes 2 minutes to cover up all that damage. No one ever saw that damage in the light of day. And they had to make that happen. Number 5, once again, the delay in reporting. The idea with the Fitzgerald that both crews, the Navy saying that were not communicating to each other, had not communicated to each other at all. One called the Japanese Coast Guard, and the other one, on a cell phone, allegedly, called the 7th Fleet at exactly the same time, 50 minutes after the event. Covered the poorly trained, lackadaisical standards prior to, but then, of course, after. They are just absolute heroes and masters of their domain and know exactly what's expected of them. Just as he said in the Admiral Coin, performed as we expected. As we expected, really. You had an expectation of how crews should perform. No, sorry, you don't use that kind of word. Once again, number 7, the coincidence with the cables now. We're supposed to believe are just a coincidence. Now we have a 4th that I've just shown, that there's some incident, some issue with a cable out there being cut right off Triton Island, right where the USS Statham was, a ship that also lost a sailor under mysterious circumstances. Number 8, and this goes to another point, at the press conference, Admiral Coin, 3 times, and 48 hours later, apparently decided to announce this time as 2:20, when they then went back and changed everything to 1:30. How could we believe anything else he said in the press conference if he didn't even have the time of the event right? And by that time, the Japanese had already told him that it was 1:30, and when confronted, they said they weren't going to dispute it, at least publicly. And also in that press conference, number 9, you could see that full cooperation, asked twice by 2 different reporters. The admiral said, we're going to completely cooperate with the Japanese authorities. They called the Japanese authorities. Remember, they asked for the help from the Japanese Coast Guard, Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. And then within a matter of a week, they go to full operational security. They lock everything up. They completely sign all of the sailors aboard to non-disclosure agreements and give no access to the ship to either the Japanese, the Filipinos, anyone. And the only people doing investigating are the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Coast Guard. And the 10th thing that I brought up was the issue with the USS Lake Champlain we covered. And you can see this. There's a video that says a 3rd ship. This issue with them hitting that alleged fishing vessel said that they were unable to see it. They had crossed its path twice and intercepted it the 3rd time they were crossing its path. They were doing... It almost looks like a missile trying to hit a plane and missing it twice and finally running into it. And when you look at the path of the USS Lake Champlain, it mimics a little bend in the undersea cable layout. And there's only one place in that whole giant sea up there where there are cables and where they meet, and that's exactly where that event happened. And now again, here's the 4th time we've been able to show, once again, off Triton Island, where the USS was doing what Freedom of Navigation Operations, FONOP, phone up, they called it. And in this area, right off Triton Island, we see a cable, and this is off the coast, the east coast of Vietnam, that has, what looks to me like is being reported by the vessel finder map here, is it's been cut. It's been cut or damaged. And like I said, I've looked all over. If you folks can find any place where you can see a cable just end in the middle of nowhere and another one just, you know, end also right at that same area with no connection in between, please show me. I've looked and looked and looked. I've looked in Europe. I've looked in the Mediterranean. I've looked off our coast. I can't find this anywhere but here. I'm sure there might be, but the fact that this is right off Triton Island, or right where the Statham was sailing, and there were Chinese jets that took an issue with it, I think is pretty darn suspect. So those were the big 10. Once again, I'll say it, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The best part of this channel is that we don't deal in conspiracy theory. We don't deal with things that we can't show proof for. Even when we were talking about EMP mines, and we were talking about boarding teams, and we were talking about all that, there was evidence. I mean, the Chinese have this technology. They have these super silent subs. EMP mines do exist. They're out there, and it's primarily Asia that's looking for them. Or, excuse me, not looking for them. Asia is the ones developing them. We had a lot of enemies in that area at that time, and enemies that were acting out and acting very provocatively. So this is where I'm going to leave it. You guys can do what you do down in the discussion. Best discussion on YouTube, bar none. I want to say thank you again. It's been a fantastic year. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep looking into these issues. We're going to keep our eye on Venezuela. There's some issues I have wanted to do videos on. They're attempting to nationalize a bank down there, and it's heating up. You know, there's a large army down there that's undocumented and ready to move. So like, share, subscribe. You guys have a happy new year. Be safe. Please be safe tonight. I mentioned before that I work for Uber, and I'm going to be spending most of the night out getting people home safely. I know it's expensive, but it sure beats the alternative if you've been enjoying beverages. So anyway, like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much, and we will see you next year. Have a great night. Thank you.